All righty.
Alrighty.
So in this segment of the program, we're going to be talking about a breathing technique, a 3-stage breathing relaxation meditation technique. And this is one of the foundational techniques that we're going to use to do a wake-induced lucid dream later in the program. And so today we're just going to talk about learning it, practicing it, getting used to it, and getting good at it. So then when we go to do a wake-induced lucid dream and get up in the middle of the night and perform this relaxation to actually transition consciously into a lucid dream, we'll have we'll actually, be familiar with the technique and have those neural pathways kind of programmed into us, and we'll be ready to go.
Right.
So,
And it's awareness as well, right? So it's not just the breathing and not just the relaxation, but it's the awareness of, how to, again, focus your mind on a broader spectrum or a more narrow spectrum, and, and the transitions between those things, right? So that, we're sort of leading ourselves into a more, from a state that's more diffuse to one that's more concentrated in a specific territory. So, and vice versa, right? Remember the caveat with this is it doesn't just work in one direction, right? So it goes back and forth. So if I feel like by the time I get to a more awake and aware state that I'm a little too up and I can't relax enough to, to sort of go into sleep and then move into a dream, or just move directly into a dream, then I've got to go backwards, right? And sort of make it more diffuse again and stabilize it, and then sort of come back to that. So it's just my mind that's awake and aware. It's not dragging my my body awareness and my senses being, heightened and sort of waking me up into a more manic state. I don't want to do that. So
right.
It's just my mind that's awake.
Right. So this technique is called Shamatha, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know there's other names for it too, but we'll go with the Tibetan Buddhist name. How's that?
Sounds good. We like traditional.
It's just a name. It's a way to identify it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Cool. So take us through it.
Take it away. All right. So there isn't a lot of preliminary to this, right? It's, you can do it in a sitting up position. It's fine if you want to do that in the beginning, again, to sort of get a feel for it. But I would probably do it in a supine position, right? So corpse pose if you're a yoga person, which is, basically lying on your back, right? Nothing crossed or any of that stuff, right? So I'm not crossing my ankles. I'm not touching, my hands aren't touching each other. So I'm not making any of those kinds of connections, right? I'm just like lying down. If you're in a recliner, it's a recliner. That's fine. If you're on a bed, it's fine, right? So the idea is that just remember that by association, if it's the bed that you normally sleep in, you're going to have a harder time staying awake when you're in a position that normally people go to sleep in, right? Unless you sleep in a very strange position, and this is different than that. So maybe that's enough of a cue to kind of keep you in the practice and not drift off to sleep. Although I find, working in bed is a little bit more difficult to stay aware while you're going through the practice, right? So it does happen over time, but I find in the beginning it was difficult for me, and that's why I started getting up and, making that more of my concentrated focus, right? Because it's like,
you mean doing it in a recliner, so you're in a
recliner, yeah,
elevated position.
Yep, just because it was my association with bed was sleep, and at the time, when I was doing it, it was like I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. So just because of all school and things that were happening, right? So there wasn't a lot of time for that. So anytime I lay down on my bed, I was like instantly out. So so I had to find a different way to sort of take away that association of bed sleep and find another place that I could do this in a very relaxed position. And a recliner is a great, it's a great sort of in-between stage, right? It's not completely sitting up. it's leaning back, but it's not completely flat either. And, it's very supportive. So you can feel like your body is supported on all areas. And if you need to prop, I know this is a little off to the side, but if you need to prop, do that, whatever makes you feel comfortable. If you need to stick a pillow someplace or a pillow behind your head or anything to make you so comfortable that you feel like you can let go completely of your physical body and it will be completely supported in that chair, then you're in a good spot to start. So, but find the position that's good for you, or find a place that's good for you. And you want to be anywhere from completely supine, so laid out on the floor on a yoga mat or on an air mattress or something like that, or in a recliner. I mean, you can do it sitting up, at least in the beginning stages, but I would suggest be in a place where you can really relax completely if you can.
Yeah.
So we'll break it down in stages. So the first stage they liken to the roots of a tree, and this is just the relaxation. So my awareness is very diffuse at this point, right? It's not open focus where I'm focusing on the invisible, right? The space around me. It's not that. I'm still focused on the physical body, on the tactile sensations of my physical body, and the tactile sensations that come up from my breathing, right? So as I'm breathing, and I want to just get a nice normal, whatever your normal pace of breathing is. It's not fourfold breathing or anything like that. It's not that contrived, right? It's just what's your natural state of breathing, and you're just sort of bringing your awareness to that. And then you're just concentrating on that and bringing your awareness to your physical body, your whole body at the same time, right? Like wherever sensations come up. And so just acknowledging them and letting them go. And it can also be, at that stage, well, let's leave it to the second stage. So stick with the physical body, right? The tactile sensation. So if you have a little sensation on your right calf, you just sort of acknowledge it and let it go. If you feel like your mind's wandering, just gently bring it back and just stick with the breathing, and sort of focus on the breathing. And if you have to count it, it's fine. It's something to sort of, if you feel like, I could really drift off to sleep here. I mean, that's not what we're trying to do. So the idea is, I just want to be as physically relaxed as possible. And so I'm going to do that. And that whole process will take about 8 minutes, right? So each one of these segments, for now, make into an 8-minute segment. So the second stage, and I would probably do that by itself, just that 8-minute stage of the whole body being relaxed and focusing on that tactile sensation all over, very diffuse awareness, right? And just the breathing and whatever sensations that brings up in the body.
And
For 8 minutes, I'd probably do that 3 times.
And you had mentioned at one point that like when you're allowing your awareness to move through the body and become aware of sensations in different places, that it could be very good to like name the sensations, right? Or to like say in your mind, like, oh, I have I can feel tension in my, my leg or whatever that is. And then some in my hand or something like that, right? So you're almost like as a way to enhance the movement of awareness through to different territories that are calling your attention with that sensation.
That's a slightly different method. I mean, they're very, very close, right? I mean, and that's sort of that representation that we use with the another meditation that we've used in the past called the practice of the presence of God, right? Where it's like you go from a, like pinpoint, like, oh, my, right calf is an itch, oh, my left elbow has this. So, I feel like little pins and needles along my right index finger, whatever that is. It's like you're just sort of naming it and jumping from one thing to the next. And your awareness is sort of moving around from one place to another. This is much more diffuse. So it's sort of all at once. You just sort of, your mind is recognizing it, acknowledging it, and letting it go. And then just whatever your mind gets drawn to next. But it's the whole body all at once. we're not really identifying it or putting any more attention on it than we need to, because the idea is that as we contract, it's going to sort of narrow that focus and bring us, more wakefulness in our mind, but less sensation, awareness of the body. So it's another step to sort of get in there.
Gotcha.
Yep. And I would do that first stage, that really diffuse all over the body, about 8 minutes. And I'd probably do that one 3 times by itself, 3 separate times, so like 3 different days you do that. They don't all have to be in a row. It's just like, you're going to weave this in, right? It's just another technique. So, excuse me. So then, so the second stage is the trunk, right? The trunk of the tree. So from that diffuse place, I'm going to just focus on the whole abdomen area, right? So instead of my awareness being from head to toe, so to speak, I'm going to focus just on my abdomen, so from the solar plexus down to like the belt territory. So, and again, still focusing on the breathing, still being aware of that. And then, but any sensations that are only within that scope of that abdominal area. Okay. So, and I do that for 8 minutes. And that's the second thing. Again, if your mind wanders, thoughts come in, you just acknowledge them and gently bring it back to the focus that you're trying to, become aware of, without awareness of anything else around, right? So just by focusing on this and being really cognizant of that territory and the breathing, that it sort of takes energy and awareness away from the other things, the rest of the body.
I have another question too, actually. So like when you're going through this process and you're bringing your awareness to, let's say, your body or just your abdomen, there's a difference between like, not even just like visualizing your body or your abdomen, let's say, but also like there's a difference. Like I have this experience, right, where like I can do these things 2 different ways. Like one way I can do it where like it's kind of like I'm half visual. Let's say I'm on the abdomen part, right, and I'm kind of trying to almost like look at my abdomen with my mind when I'm doing it, right?
Sure.
And the other way of doing it is like embodied, like feeling my abdomen more and anchoring the sensation that I'm most aware of in that territory of my physical body, and like really focusing my breathing in that area. And it's almost like doing it mentally versus doing it like physically in this immersion in the sensations of the body. So
Right.
I don't know. I guess one relates more to the mind, it seems like, and one relates more to like an immersion in the sensation of the body itself. So I don't know if there's a balance between those things, or if attention on one is more important than the other, or.
For me, with this technique, I think it's more important that you're sort of in that sensation area and not so much visualizing anything, because when you start to visualize, it takes energy to do that and takes attention away from that point in order to visualize something. And you're sort of engaging that visual sense, even though it's just within your mind, right? The idea is that, you're sort of looking to see what's going on. And so that will split your attention to some degree, right? It's like literally just focus on the breathing and just the physical, the tactile sensation of that abdominal area, to the exclusion of everything else as much as possible, right? And if it starts to drift, your mind starts to drift, you bring it back to that, and only that, right? So you're constantly, because when you put more and more attention on a certain territory, right, it starts to pull back from these other areas. And so, the idea is that we're relaxing the body. And so as I pull more awareness away from the appendages and my head and all of that, and even the chest, right, it's like more and more focus, more and more attention goes on that abdominal area, but that energy is being sort of pulled back from those other territories, so there's less sensation there. So, and that makes them relax even deeper, especially if you can't feel them. And it's a very odd sensation, right? There's plenty of people, I've done this myself many times, where I'm like, I can't feel my right leg. Like, I literally can't feel my leg. Like, I couldn't tell you if it's floating above the table, if it's even attached to my body, or I mean, I can't feel the tactile sensation of the table under me or the chair under me. I mean, literally, there's no awareness of it whatsoever. And it's very odd. And so, you know, sometimes to the point of distraction, right? Where it's like, plenty of times when I've like wiggled my toe or whatever to see like, oh yeah, it's still there. Or, or you touch it, it's like, oh yeah, it's still there. Okay. So it's like after a while, I mean, we're looking for that effect, but it is odd. It really is odd to relax something so much that you have no sensation there, right? It's a very strange thing. So, but we are trying to get to that. So, and just know that it's, pulling your awareness away from those territories and focusing on a certain, specific territory. It makes it, it's a, you have a much better chance of getting to that stage, especially if you practice it over and over again, right? It's like, it becomes easier and easier and faster to get to that place. And that's what we're trying to do. So, and that's, on the way to profound relaxation, right? So it's sort of a stepping stone toward that. So that's what I would do on the second stage, and just be aware of that for that 8 minutes of time. And so when I would go to practice that, you don't want to just jump into the trunk, right? You want to sort of train the pattern of going from the roots to the trunk, right? So when I would do, let's say I'm just where I've done 3 times on the roots, and that's been great. And now I'm just going to do the abdomen area, the trunk of the tree. So I might do a minute of just the roots, right? Or the roots of the tree, where I'm just diffuse attention all over the body. Just a minute of breathing like that. And then, pull it back and make it, just the abdominal area, where it's a little bit more focused. But the same idea, where it's like you just acknowledge it and let it go. You're not judging it. You're not aggravated about it. You're not willing it to happen. There's none of that. It's just really this very objective place, and you're just sort of aware of it. That's all. You're just like, you're observing it. That's it. There's no, I mean, it's relaxation, right? It's not like there's a moral judgment there if there's more sensation or less sensation or whatever it is, right? It just is what it is. And that's all you want to be aware of, and stick to the program. It's like, just focus on that area to the exclusion of everything else, 8 minutes, and then stop. And so the same idea, do it about 3 times like that, just so you get a feel for it. Then the last stage is from that, what would be the abdominal breathing, right, in that territory, or my focus and my awareness is on that. Then I bring my awareness just to the apertures of my nose. So just the entrance of my nostrils. So, and it can be, even a little bit more focused. So what is that like? It's like you'll feel the coolness of air, not through your whole sinuses, just at that aperture, right? And so, and then, the slightly warmer air on my breath out, from through the nostrils again. So it's like, and my awareness is all to those, 2 nostrils, just the entrance, right? It's not going into the nose. It's not going into the sinuses or into my lungs. I'm literally breathing with my focus just on those territories. And that's it. And so that's considered the foliage of the tree, right? So it's a little bit more active, and it will, because it's a narrower focus, it has a tendency to make you more wakeful. And so, but the other part is that it's pulling back all of this energy from the appendages, from the core of the body, all of that, just to these little tiny points, right? If I can hone my focus to that place. And so it pulls sensation and tension and all of that away from the rest of the body, so it relaxes even more profoundly. So, and again, just keeping your awareness there. Try that 8 times. And again, the way that I would start would be a minute on the roots, a minute on the trunk, and then move to the nostrils for the foliage for 8 minutes, right? And do that 3 times. And then after that, you've got all the components of those first 3 stages, right? So, and that's all we really need for our purposes for lucid dreaming. There are other stages that you can do for meditational practices more within that Tibetan Buddhist, religious structure. So, but for our purposes, it's these first 3 stages are the most beneficial for us for lucid dreaming or attaining that. So then I would do 3 times where you're doing all 3 segments, right? But now you're going to do the full. So 8 times 3 is 24, right? So I'm going to do 8 minutes on the roots where it's diffuse over the whole body. Then, I might have a little ping timer or whatever after every 8 minutes, like the seconds timer, right? Or like every 8 minutes. And then it's going to, move. I'm pulling, my awareness by focusing just on the abdominal area and really concentrating on that for 8 minutes. And then on the next 8-minute segment, I transfer through to just the apertures of the nostrils, and that's it. And then focusing on that, and that's the whole, that's the whole process of going through that. Now it's funny that, I didn't do it this way. It's just sort of the way that that it was trained. That 3 times 8 is 24, and 24 minutes is basically the same timing that we use for our lucid dream meditations. So they're sort of equal, and you can, disperse them, make them, do one day and then another one a couple days later or whatever, take your time, go through it. It's just a technique to sort of, it's doing 2 things, right? It's relaxing the whole body so that you can be in that relaxed state, but it's also a way to keep your mind engaged so that your body is asleep, but your mind is awake, which we really need for a wild or awake-induced lucid dream. But it can help you when you're relaxing to go into, a dream-induced lucid dream too, especially if you're going to work that from bed or you're going to try it from a different location. Either way, it's a nice way to sort of focus you on that place. And so when your mind is awake, but your body is already sleeping or pretty darn close to it, it's easy to sort of do your induction and just let yourself sort of drift down into that place. And it's a nice transitional piece. And I think that it's helped a lot of people in the past with this, especially trying to balance out, wakefulness and falling to sleep too easily or staying wide awake for hours, right? So this is a nice way to transition that. If I get too wakeful, then I move it's a 2-way street, right? It doesn't just go from the bottom up, right? From the foliage, I can move down. If I get too wakeful and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm hanging here and my body is completely offline and my mind's just sort of floating around in this little vessel. And but it's not, how do I move it forward? What do I do now? And so that wakefulness, I'll bring my attention back to the abdomen, right? So I can go in the other direction and bring it there to sort of stabilize that, bring the mind down a little bit, right? So, and then as that disperses slightly, then I'll bring it back up as I start to feel, oh, okay, I'm feeling a little bit more relaxed, even mentally a little bit more relaxed. And so then I'll move it back to the nostrils and sort of go through that process again. Feel comfortable about moving back and forth, to sort of get you into the right balanced state where you're awake and aware, but your body is offline. And that will give you the perfect jumping off point to, either do a wild or to let yourself sort of find that hypnagogic state and sort of, work in that territory and then sort of let something that's there, sort of move you into the dream. It's also possible to just, bring up your lucid dream meditation at that point, where your body's asleep, but your mind is awake. Not the whole thing, because you've already done the first parts, right? The relaxation and all of that's done. So you're just bringing up the image of that and sort of running that mental rehearsal in your mind. And as you do, and you're adding the more of the sensory array to that, right? More attention on your senses. What are the visuals are getting strikingly better, the hearing, all of those things. And it's very likely that from that stage, you're probably going to move right into a lucid dream, right? So, and, or at least into a dream, which then you'll have the chance to become lucid in afterwards. So it really is a pretty versatile technique to sort of in that beginning stages where we're trying to balance everything out and really have that perfect balance of wakefulness, but body offline, right? So that's sort of like that's the holy grail as far as relaxation goes.
Right. Cool. Well, makes sense. And yeah, definitely. So, so we've got, I mean, that's definitely pretty manageable too with those shorter segments of meditation to start practicing those and building them up and getting more familiar with them. So we can certainly integrate those things into our schedule for the next few weeks. And yeah.
Sure, and don't think that you need to do everything all the time, right? It's like
Right.
you weave them in and out as you need, and know that this is, it can help you now, but it's going to help you later when we start doing, wake-induced lucid dreams as well, um, because you're going to need to be conscious. The whole idea with a wake-induced lucid dream is that you're moving into the dream consciously. You're not waiting to realize that you're in a dream and then become lucid. You're wakeful and lucid right from the beginning. And there are lots of little nuanced techniques, idiosyncratic techniques, that people can use to sort of, that they use to move into that place. And but we'll get into that, and that's another broad territory, right? So but this is just a preliminary for that. So but it's a good one to have online so that you're not, what I think the best part of this is not just that you're training it and doing it, and that it has such, it's very, very helpful on a lot of levels. And but you want to get it down enough so that when you wake up and you go to do it, you're not like thinking about how is it done. You want to be comfortable enough with it so that it's just like you just do it, right? It's like it's a pretty simple practice, right? So it may not be as easy as it is simple, but it is simple. And so but how things can get confusing when you're tired at night. You just woke up and, oh, I'm going to go do the Shamatha thing. And it's like, oh, what was that? Who starts first? Is there some roots and branches and whatever? It's like, am I focusing on this first or not? All these questions come up in your mind. And so it's like, if it's already been trained to the level that it's like, oh, okay, this is what I'm doing next. It's so much more restful to go into it that way rather than being frustrated right from the beginning. How do I have to look at my notes? Oh, damn, I should have done this earlier.
Right.
It's like reduce the amount of that sort of suffering that you can induce on yourself, So, practicing it is a good way to get it down. And like I said, it's not a complex thing. It's just a matter of doing it and getting familiar with it.
Right. Cool. Well, sounds good. And yeah, thank you.
No problem.
All right. And we will see you guys in the next segment.